This is Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque, continuing 16 years on air and online, helping you succeed in buying, selling, and investing in property. The best real estate strategies out there just for you.
Welcome to Real Estate This Week. Hi again, I'm Stephen Gasque, and I'm so glad you're here as we look at winning strategies for home buyers and home sellers, tactics and techniques designed to help you navigate your next transaction and coming through it with flying colors. So for that, let's talk to a real estate pro. Joining us now is Kristina Rhodes with the Mike Reeder team at ERA First Advantage Real Estate in Evansville, Indiana. Kristina's been helping buyers and sellers for more than 20 years, and she's a past recipient of the Good Neighbor Award from NAR for her volunteer work launching the first Make-A-Wish Council in Southwest Indiana. Kristina, welcome to Real Estate This Week.
Hello, Stephen. It's so nice to be here.
I am so glad you're here. So first of all, tell me, how's business in Indiana?
You know, business in Indiana is strong. We're here in the southwest corner of Indiana, and we're blessed to be in a market that offers home affordability and a good, strong economy.
Well, that's good. Now, you've probably heard the reports, Kristina, that many markets are changing, and what used to be a solid seller's market in many areas is transitioning to a balanced market and maybe even a buyer's market. Are you seeing that in your area?
Absolutely. So that is a trend I think that's happening everywhere. And, for the last couple of years, sellers have held all the cards. And now we're moving not necessarily toward a buyer's market, but what I would call a balanced market, which is, in my opinion, a healthy market for everybody.
And tell people who might not know, because after all, it's been ages since we've had balanced markets in America. What is a balanced market?
A balanced market is about 6 months' supply of homes for sale, which gives every home a fair shot at getting good exposure to the market. Buyers don't have to be super rushed to make a big decision, and houses get marketing time and they get exposure, and we have multiple showings before we finally come to terms with an offer.
I see. They don't have to get in their offer at the speed of light and compete with 20 people for the same house.
No, sir. Sometimes, but it is not the norm like it was a few years ago.
Excellent. And so let's start talking about winning strategies, beginning right where we are with today's home buyers. Mm-hmm. So Kristina, if someone came to you and wanted to buy a home in your market, what would be your best advice right out of the box to that person?
Listen to your realtor. And my advice to them as their realtor is going to be prepared and be realistic. So when you go out there to search for a home, have your financing in line. Know what you're looking for, because every buyer has those lists of things they'd like to have and things they have to have. So let's keep that list realistic and top of mind when we're out there looking. And buyers are educated with all the information that they have at their fingertips on the internet. I want my buyers to feel confident that when they see the right house, they know it's the right house, and they're prepared and they're confident to make a good offer.
So with that shift in the market, will they face a lot of competition or not so much?
They're not going to be in a multiple offer situation every time, but certain price ranges are still very competitive. So in my market, 300 and below is considered a first-time home buyer market. So those homes tend to move more quickly than those homes priced higher than 300. So it's I know we're talking about buyers, but it's super important for sellers to have their home in good shape, to have it priced right, to get a possible multiple offer situation, because that is still a competitive price range.
So if we are talking about some competition on some houses, What would I do if I really want that house and I want to beat everybody else? What would I do, Kristina?
So there's a lot of strategies. First of all, make a strong offer with not a lot of contingencies. In other words, let's not ask the seller to do a lot, right? We're going to make sure your financing is strong. We have a mortgage approval letter. If you can pay your own closing costs, pay your own closing costs. Maybe not ask for a home buyer's warranty. I would never suggest waiving an inspection, but there are terms that you can write in the purchase agreement to make the seller feel more comfortable. They're not going to get nickel and dime during the inspection process. And then in Indiana, we have something called an escalation clause, which is a very useful tool for all buyers. It says, in essence, the buyer will pay $1,000 over the highest offer up to X. I love that tool because it keeps them from paying more than they want. So let's say they only want to pay 300. If there's an offer over 300, then theirs is off the table. And it keeps them from paying more than they have to because we're going to pay $1,000 over that next highest offer.
But a question about that escalation clause, Kristina. Back when I was a realtor, if a buyer came in with an escalation clause, the seller would typically just ask that.
That is always a risk. So as long as sometimes they do, they just counter back. Well, 300 is your best. Well, your buyer paid 300. And as long as the agents are totally transparent with how they're negotiating the offer and they leave that decision up to the buyer, then that is totally fine.
Okay. And now also with more houses coming on the market, there's an old saying that says, hey, if you want to sleep on it, someone else is going to be sleeping in it.
Yes.
But what about in today's market with the shift we're seeing?
So there are still multiple offer situations. Some houses still sell really quickly. I would rather my people take a little time than to rush into something that they regret later. I want them to feel confident in the choice that they make.
Well, that's good. That's good because, again, if you are peaceful and calm with what you're doing, that's confidence right there. You don't want to be wondering, am I doing the right thing? Is this going to be a disaster, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Right. And so, what about pricing? It wasn't too long ago buyers had to come in at full price or above full price. Are those days gone?
They're not gone, but they are not happening as often either. So in our market here in Southwest Indiana, our list price to sales price ratio is 96.3%. So that's still a really strong number. So sellers are still winning because they're getting really close to asking. But it's 96.3%. So that means sellers are giving a little. They're giving in closing costs. They're giving a little discount in price. There's something they're giving, they're negotiating.
Right, right. And something you said a few minutes ago applies to those new rules that went into effect just about a year ago. If a seller has their house on the market, well, they can pay the buyer's commission if they want to, but they don't have to. What are you seeing? I mean, are most sellers still paying for the buyer's side of the commission?
In our market, sellers are still willing to help buyers pay their real estate commissions. Real estate is still essentially structured this very same way, where real estate commissions are negotiable and always have been negotiable. Just the way we present it now is a little different. Sometimes that real estate commission does come into play with a multiple offer situation, but I've had very little pushback. Our market has seen very little pushback with sellers not willing to pay for the buyer's agent fee.
I can see that. And that makes perfect sense, Kristina, because after all, the goal is to sell your house.
Yes.
And if you think that you're getting a good price, plus if you have a ton of equity in that place because of the price run up, it's probably no big deal.
And people understand, the people I work with understand that the realtor plays an essential role in the transaction, and that has value. And they do not want to try to figure all this out on their own.
And so, as we leave the buyer's side of the closing table, again, what is your best advice to a buyer who wants to win in today's market?
Be prepared, be realistic, feel confident, and listen to your realtor.
It is great advice. And so now let's go on the other side of the table and talk about sellers. Not too long ago, Kristina, as you well know, sellers would get the best possible price in the shortest amount of time. Is that still happening?
That is still happening. My sellers still get the best possible price in the shortest amount of time, but that's now no longer hours. Sometimes it's a couple of weeks, 30 days, 45 days.
I see, because boy, back then, you put a great house at a great price on the market, and you don't even have time to drive over there. It'll be gone by the time you pulled in the driveway.
Yeah, people were making sight unseen, over full price, waive inspections, as is, without ever walking in the door.
And what about the condition of the home? Not too long ago, a seller could just put up a for sale sign and it would sell for a pretty good price, no matter what kind of shape the house was in. What about now?
Now that we have higher inventory levels, so which goes back to what we were talking about with that balanced market, if a seller wants that premium price, they're gonna have to put a little effort into it. So the house needs to be clean. The house needs to smell good. It has to have good curb appeal. And staging may make a little bit of difference. And when I say staging, I don't mean you have to buy furniture and hire a designer, but just decluttering, setting some pretty things about, helping the buyer picture the function of each room and how they would live in it.
And some people may not know, but a professional stager will come in and give you a consultation on what you can do. They don't always clear out all your furniture and bring in all new rented furniture. They can do that, of course. But at the same time, they can just give you some really solid ideas.
Absolutely. And the actual real estate world does not work exactly like you see on TV at times. So yes, you can hire a designer for a consultation to stage your home.
That's wonderful. Now, we mentioned this earlier, but you said that sellers are a little more willing to negotiate these days because of the shift in the market. What kind of negotiations are we talking about? Price, the amount of the down payment, the amount of the earnest money?
Most seller concessions now involved closing costs, buyer's agent's commission, and then price.
They're not going way down on price, right? Just a little bit?
Just a little bit, 96.3%. So that's a 3% discount.
Excellent. And so once again, Kristina, in today's market, if someone came to you and said, please sell my house quickly and for the best money possible, what would be your best winning advice to that person?
Let's stage the house for success. So let's make sure it's super clean. If there's something that the seller knows needs to be fixed, let's just go ahead and fix it. And I try to encourage them to look at their house as if they were a buyer, because we see our houses every day. We just tend to accept the way they are. So we need to put on a different set of glasses and walk through the house as a buyer and pick out those things and get them fixed before we ever hit the market.
Do you mean that if a realtor came into my house and saw all the fishing rods stacked up in the corners of every room, they'd have something to say about it?
They'd have to go, Stephen. They would. They'd have to go.
And the final two questions for you, Kristina. In today's market, as we're seeing the shift from a solid seller's market into a more balanced market, is this a good time to buy a house?
It is a great time to buy a house with the cost of living constantly rising, and rents and utilities and insurance and just groceries, the cost of everything. Buying a house keeps your cost of housing fixed. You get a fixed rate mortgage, and while you're paying for that fixed rate mortgage, the value of your house is increasing, your mortgage is decreasing. You're building up equity that is going to put your family in a good position for the long term.
And now the same question for sellers. Is now a good time to sell your house?
Yes. So I tell my sellers it's their timing, not mine. So people want to time the market. They feel like springtime is better than maybe the winter months. And that is absolutely untrue. Houses sell 12 months out of the year, and what's most important is that we do it on their time frame.
That's wonderful. And Kristina, that wraps up our real estate conversation, but I have another couple of questions for you about something that doesn't involve buying or selling homes. As we all know, you launched the first Make-A-Wish project in Southwest Indiana. And I want to congratulate you again for being an NAR Good Neighbor for that effort. But I understand,
Thank you,
you're very welcome. But I understand you didn't stop there. You're still going. Tell us about your new initiatives.
So, a couple years ago, we launched something here called Four Corners. And the name of this program came, of course, from the Bible, because in the Bible it says that you sow your field, but you keep the four corners for the needy in your community. So we partnered with our local rescue mission, because as realtors, every day we see when people move, they have all kinds of things they do not want and they do not need. And in our community, there wasn't a good solution for that. And so then eventually, all of these things end up in the landfill. People are busy, they're trying to move, and they just need it out of their hair, so it just gets taken away. We have partnered with a local mover, and for those larger furniture items, they will come pick them up at no charge to the homeowner, deliver them to the rescue mission. It either goes into the home of one of their residents who is setting up a new home, or it gets put into their thrift store to be sold. And in the last 18 months, that program has generated $180,000
Whoa!
for our homeless community.
Congratulations, Kristina. That is just wonderful.
And it's just a win-win-win all around.
So once again, tell us the name of it and how people can find out about it in your area.
It's called Four Corners, and it is a partnership with the Southwest Indiana Association of Realtors and the Evansville Rescue Mission.
Excellent. Well, Kristina, I know that you never wake up in the morning without thinking, what good things can I do for my neighbors today? And that's one of the reasons that I'm so happy you joined us on the show today, because you always make a difference. And I want to thank you not only for Four Corners and Make-A-Wish and everything else you're doing to make life better for your neighbors, but I also want to thank you for sharing your winning strategies with us. Kristina, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
You're very welcome. Kristina Rhodes with the Mike Reeder team at ERA First Advantage Real Estate in Evansville, Indiana. Kristina's been helping buyers and sellers for more than 20 years, and she's a past recipient of the Good Neighbor Award from NAR for her volunteer work launching the first Make-A-Wish Council in Southwest Indiana.
You're listening to Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque.
And now, it's time for Beyond the Basics, in which we bring your real estate knowledge to the next level. And today, let's talk about one of the best winning strategies out there. Whether you're a home buyer or a home seller, quite often, there's nothing quite so powerful as the word yes. And that one word might be more important now than it's been for years, because for so long, it's been a solid seller's market. There weren't enough houses for sale, and so the ones that did come on the market were in high demand, So a seller didn't really have to negotiate very much, or at all. In many cases, it was their way or the highway. But now we're experiencing a market shift. More houses are coming up for sale. And as that happens, the buyers have more choices, and the sellers are not in quite the powerful position they used to be in. And so, as the market shifts, the fundamentals of good faith negotiations are once again becoming very important to every deal. And it's very simple, really. Whether you're the buyer or the seller, just try to say yes whenever you can. Whether you're negotiating the actual contract or some other issues like the inspections or what's included or not, you might get a request from the other side. And when you do, ask yourself 3 questions. First, is it reasonable? Second, will it cost me money? And third, will it cost me time? Okay? And if you determine it is reasonable and it won't cost you money or time, just try to say yes. That will help keep the deal on track, which of course is the big prize. And also, that show of goodwill will mean a lot to the other side, and it might make them more willing to say yes themselves if you have a request. Now, if you're the seller and you're under contract for a great price on your home, the buyer might ask something like, would you consider leaving the window treatments, the curtains, and the blinds? Think it over and try to say yes. After all, those curtains and blinds probably won't fit the windows in your next house, and so leave the buyer with a smile on their face by just saying yes. If you're the buyer, the seller might ask whether they can leave a bunch of paint cans which match the colors of the house. Now, you could say no, since you plan on repainting the place someday, or you could say yes. That would make it a lot easier for the seller, because they wouldn't have to bring the paint to some paint recycling facility. Plus, you might have a few touch-ups you need to do, so it could help you too. So again, when you get a request from the other side of the closing table, ask yourself, is it reasonable? Will it cost me money? And will it cost me time? If it's a reasonable request that won't cost you anything, saying yes might make the transaction a really great transaction for you and everyone else. Next time on Real Estate This Week, the fall market will have the best expert advice as the markets shift from sellers towards buyers. What's it all mean to you if you plan to do a deal this fall? That's next on Real Estate This Week. And until then, I'm Stephen Gasque, and thank you for listening.
A brand new episode of Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque drops every Thursday, everywhere. And you're invited to listen, subscribe, and follow us. Just look for Real Estate This Week with Stephen Gasque. The best real estate strategies out there, just for you.